Anyway, that reminded me of our first year of this show.
It's funny. I didn't realize how many. All right, so I had a side project since I had a little bit of time while we weren't recording. I took all of our episodes and had the AI stuff transcribe them. So going back to the very first episode.
Wow.
8 days worth of audio that it transcribed over. And it's broken up into individual episodes. So each of the episodes has its transcript.
But if you were to listen to the whole thing,
8 days straight.
I'm going to tell people, hey, you can listen to every single podcast in 8 days.
Yeah. Make it
But
9
that's
days
all
because it's 8 days and some
days.
hours and whatever.
8 days and less than 9 days.
Yeah. But it was a lot.
Wow.
I took a screenshot
That
I could remember exactly how much it was.
That's awesome. So, AI. I sound like I'm doing a stand-up comedy bit. So, how about that AI?
Is that what we're thinking we're going to chat about?
You know what? It is now.
All right.
So, I actually I started following this really cool AI account on, not AI account, this account that maybe it's AI, I don't know, but it's an account that shows image. I'm sorry, the word, like my ability to
generative images.
Yeah, it's AI generated images that are posted to this Instagram account, and it's pretty cool. But like one of them was image. So I feel like calling it AI is a misnomer because it's not actually artificial intelligence. Like,
right, you're asking a advanced.
It's a large language model software.
Yeah, and I don't know. You can kind of.
I get where it's like a little bit like I'm okay with people calling it AI. I'm okay with people thinking it's actual AI, but when it's not actual AI, I'm okay with all of that because it's I think some of them, if some of these pass the Turing test, which means that the Turing test didn't do what we thought it would do.
Well, or these things are intelligent enough. Maybe
it fits in maybe it fits in a place where we didn't think that there was this space that existed,
and that I would agree with that more than just saying that it didn't do what we thought it would do.
Yeah, no, it did. I think you're right. It turns out that there's a place where software can pass the Turing test, but it's not actually, it's not self-aware. It's not coming up with new. It's not actually coming up with. Well, is it coming up with new concepts, new data?
So this is where I have some problems with it in general, because to an extent it kind of is.
Yeah.
But not without prompt.
Yes.
Like, you have to use it as a tool still. It's not like it just creates things arbitrarily. So I think that's where it fits into this middle space that is difficult to classify, because true AI should be thinking for itself and acting on those thoughts, which is a scary as hell proposition.
Right. Something that does not require our input.
Right. But because you can give it prompts and tell it to create something that does not currently exist, there is a level of it being able to, quote unquote, think in a way that is not how we've come to expect machines to operate.
But it's all based on input from us. Like,
yes.
not just the prompt that says, "Hey, AI device, AI software, go do this thing for me." But beyond that, the model, all of the input that made it know how to do the thing, that create this new thing that never existed before, is based on input, all of the input that we've created. And I mean, at some point, there's going to be enough AI generated things on its own that it will overtake what human input. But that's we're not there yet.
Right, but
I think I'm saying that right.
You are, but I would also say that along that same line of thinking, we learn by taking in the input of other things that we've done as well.
Oh, totally. So it's not just, so it's not. Yeah, I didn't mean to necessarily say that is
a distinction, or well,
right.
It is a distinction because even though we learn the same way, we can arbitrarily decide I'm going to go create something without a prompt. That's the difference.
Right. And I've wanted to talk about this for a while, and especially saw this really interesting, these really interesting pictures, and it was some software was asked to generate images of Americans from representative Americans from every state based on what Europeans think about Americans.
That sounds hilarious. I'm gonna have to search for this.
I'll send you the link, and because it was quite good, and the thing is, it's like Alabama. People from Alabama looked bad. People from Arkansas looked bad. I can't remember Mississippi, but they probably looked bad. But then I was like Georgia. I was like, how did those like the representative of Georgia looks good? It's like that was interesting. It just tells it. Maybe just informs that maybe what Europeans think about Georgians is favorable.
Maybe. Or maybe it's because Georgia sounds similar enough to the country Georgia that there's some correlation to, I would assume like subconscious bias of they just think of those people maybe.
Yeah, but it definitely looked like Georgia of the United States. Like,
okay, maybe not then.
I'll say there was no question that this was not representative of Georgia from the United States. Could there have been input from Georgia the country? Maybe, but I don't even know how Europeans view Georgia the country.
Yeah, actually, I don't either. Which really isn't surprising. I mean, I don't know how Europeans view most things. I'm not European. It's all hearsay from my standpoint.
Not sure where I was going to go.
Oh, okay. So one of the other things that I find interesting about this, I've tried a couple of different image generators, just the ones that you can goof off with. So far on the phone, I haven't actually done anything on the Mac other than the DALL-E, attempting to generate some logo ideas type thing. But I have not had good luck trying to generate images. It always looks screwy. And I assume it's kind of a combination of two things. One, I'm using only stuff that I can access for free, which is going to be a lower tier anyway. But two, if you're not very, very descriptive, I think it kind of gets lost when it comes to imagery. Or if you're not descriptive enough. Because like I've tried to have it generate like some portrait ideas kinds of things, and I'll have like 12 fingers on one hand, or like a hand out of the middle of the chest or something, like just really random odd things that I'm sure have to do with how I'm using the tool partially, and part of it being that I'm not using premium service. But I don't really have a reason to play with generated images at the moment, so I haven't tried to figure out how to use the tool either. I just find that to be really... It seems like the most random thing. Like, that would be the kind of thing you would expect to not get wrong.
Yeah, I wonder about that, because like there's some that are out there that are and maybe it's the tool, because like the Instagram account that I was referring to earlier, it seems that they put in the text input that they provide that doesn't seem like a lot, or maybe they're not exposing exactly everything that they are putting in there. But yeah, I'm curious as to what it is, and if it's is there one of the questions I have is like, and this shifts more to oh, you are artificial. You're more towards the intelligence side of artificial intelligence than let me reproduce exactly the same thing with the exact same input. But like, if you input something and then you do it again exactly the same way, are you going to get the same results? Well, I guess not, and maybe that's not necessarily. I mean, it does mimic human intelligence, but maybe it's not necessarily intelligence because, you know, the inputs are different. It's like you do it on day one and then repeat the exact same thing on day two. The place where it's pulling data it changed in 24 hours for sure. So I was just working through that out loud.
I mean, you can make the same kind of argument for people too. It just doesn't evolve as quickly normally. I mean, it can.
Correct.
Sure.
Yeah. Yes.
But you ask somebody to draw a person smiling on day one, and it's probably going to look pretty similar to day 5 or whatever. But you get to 3 years later, and it could look drastically different. And
yeah,
from an AI perspective, that happens in a much more compressed timeline.
Yeah, and then on top of the counter argument to that is if you were to ask me to draw a mushroom, I'm going to draw a mushroom the way I drew it 20 years ago because one day I wanted to draw a mushroom and I thought that was fun, and I have been drawing mushrooms pretty much exactly the same way for 20 years. So I'm not a computer, I'm pretty sure. So I get, it makes me not, like I need, I want to be careful about to be, like it is or isn't a thing. So
yeah, it's, when you get into these types of conundrums, like I don't think we could truly have what we would consider artificial intelligence outside the realm of quantum computing. But at the same time, I wasn't really a believer that we would get to this level of generative intelligence, for just to try to make a distinction on what we have today. It's when you get to a combination of machine learning and language models and image models and all these other different types of models that you can throw at it, in conjunction with all sorts of algorithms that you could have doing things as a part of it, there's a certain point where no one can explain what's happening. And when you can't explain what's happening, is it still iterative, or is it its own level of intelligence because it's understanding how to interact with itself? And maybe not in the way we would think of a conscious understanding, but more a matter of all these different things work together in a way that makes it an entity where you couldn't take just one piece and have it be, viable by itself. But the way its inner workings interact is not statically programmable and reproducible. Does that make sense? Like it's a really tough thing to try to explain when you're not in that field.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think, yeah, and I think part of what's tough is that I don't think we really thought about it, and in the mainstream, I don't think we thought about it that much. We just assumed that we went from, the computers that we have that are getting better and better, but basically the same. Like my MacBook Pro that I have on my desk that's recording this podcast that I bought this year is just a better, faster version of the Apple II. There's been significant evolutionary advances in it, but no revolutionary advances as far as what a computer is. And your phone, your tablet, your watch, they are all just iterations of that. There's nothing particularly new. Like, yeah, the form factors are new, and they, you could say the original iPhone began, the smartphone revolution and putting a computer in your pocket. Absolutely. And it was revolutionary in that regard, but it's still the same kind of compute device. And I don't think that we'll see like a significant break forward until quantum computing becomes a thing. And so I think that was maybe the next thing. Like if you'd asked me before, if you'd asked me a year ago what I thought, where AI was going to come from, it would have been from quantum computing. But now it's like, oh, here's this other thing that I didn't know about, that we would be talking about in this way before getting to actual computing that is self-aware.
I agree, right? Like I certainly wouldn't say that there's a revolutionary change in the type of compute device, thinking about it in that scale. But at the same time, it's difficult to say that like what you have today as opposed to what you could get in 2000 isn't fairly radically different in capabilities. And so where do you draw the distinction between what becomes a different compute device? And where I'm going with this specifically, just to make sure it's kind of a clear point, the x86 architecture is drastically different from the Apple Silicon architecture. And certain components of the architecture enable certain things that were not possible or were not practical, if possible is maybe not the right word, that have enabled things like the on-device neural technology or within device, the neural engine and all that stuff, right? And I get that it's still an iteration of the same compute device, but it's a whole different world of possibilities of what that compute device can do. And where do you draw that distinction in that same argument? Because I agree with both.
Yeah.
And that makes it difficult to... That's why I paused, because it's like, how do I address this question in a way that makes sense?
Yeah, and I think it's a thing where you don't... Yeah, I agree with what you're saying as well. And because the advancements that have been made in what is basically the same type of device allows for the creation of software like these various AI software applications. I don't know if application is the right word, because I think it's a lot more than just an application.
Yeah, that is a whole other can of worms, because I do wonder about that too.
Is it a stack? I don't know. But it's certainly, you don't have that without the advancements that have been made with what we could call a standard computer, whether it be we throw in servers and personal computers, all, we can throw it all in the same bucket and call them all computer,
Well, I mean, you can, because if you can't really say that
I'm throwing them in the same bucket and calling them all the same thing.
Well, yeah,
this particular discussion.
That's what I'm saying. It's like you can't. I don't think anybody else could make an argument against that, because you can't really say that just because you would have what could have been a room of computers linked together to form a cluster of compute power in a single chassis where things have been modularized a bit, it's still the same premise. It's just iterations in technology have allowed it to become a smaller footprint and these internal components faster and more capable and all that kind of stuff. So, just helping affirm the same idea. Like there may have been changes in architectural design from, a bunch of mainframes talking to each other to, a blade chassis and its particular components, but it's still the same premise.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you remember the supercomputer that they built out of all those G5s almost 20 years ago in Virginia? Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. And I was like, how long did it take for... So, like, that was a big deal at the time because they built this... Like, it was, I think, the third most powerful supercomputer in the world. It was certainly in the top 5.
I thought it had taken the top spot.
I don't remember it ever taking the top spot. I just remember it being definitely in the top 5. I think it was number 3. And and it did it for decimal points moved to the left, less expensive than the top three or top. Yeah.
But I mean, you have different groups that have done that kind of thing often enough that I could very well be thinking about just a different iteration. But I could have swore it took TopSpot.
Yeah.
I would love to see.
But
go ahead.
What I was going to say, the thing is like, how long did it take for Apple to make one computer that did what all of those clustered Mac Pros did? Power Macs. They were Power Macs.
Yeah.
It didn't take them that long. It was less, it was, I want to say, within 5 years.
I was just going to say definitively less than a decade.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because I know that the 2013 Mac Pro put that Power Mac supercomputer to shame. Like, it was significantly better, and that was less than a decade later. So, but I think there was even a Mac Pro that surpassed it. So, but that's what, being able to, creating additional, it's not just more power, because like it's never been more power. It's well, actually, if you go back and watch those videos from that Apple time frame when they're having to talk, when they're having to compare, when they're comparing Power PC Macs with Intel PCs, they were saying, "Oh yeah, Intel is just giving you more power. They're not doing it in a smart way." And they talk about what was it? I can't remember, but it's basically the pipeline for computing. If you throw more power, it wasn't. You got more out of I remember they were getting more out of a Power PC with a lower clock speed because they were doing it smarter. They were, this is going to require follow up, but basically they were their compute power was their like a lower clock speed. They could do more faster in compute, like actual compute, with a lower clock speed processor because they were doing it in a smarter way. And I know that I've watched this video not too long ago, but I'm going to go back and watch it and give feedback for this because I really liked it. But the point is like, it's never just been, let's put more power under the hood. Let's just make it, let's just increase the clock speed. No, they're just like, let's do it in smarter ways. I mean, the whole, trying to get down to smaller transistors so that you can do things faster is a part of it. But also, like, let's make, I think Apple's touted it the best in talking about how they have, we're putting all this on a single package and we're doing a whole bunch of different things. We have, you've got, there's always been, CPUs and GPUs, and GPUs, offloading the math that's required for graphics into a processor that's specific for that. So it's basically what has made this different, the new AI software possible.
Right, and just I want to hammer, because there are a couple of times you referenced the whole, it's never just been about power, but I want to hammer that point home with another analogy. In the world of cameras, it's long been, or for a long period of time, it was always just more megapixels, more megapixels, right? The more you had, the better the image would be. And it took a long time for that to... I would say it still isn't debunked for the majority of people, but it took a long time for that to not be what people would focus on who understood what they were looking at. I'll put it that way. Because for a period of time there, that was the easy, I can point to this because I know that this is a better camera, and the way I'm going to translate it is this one number. And Intel did a very similar thing, talking about clock speeds in their wars with AMD. Because it was who could get faster, right? And
right, it was marketing.
Yeah, and it's the same thing. It's here's a single number I can give you, so I can show you why we're better, and that doesn't always translate to be accurate. Because you can't look at any piece of technology as a single number unless you're just personally assigning it a value on a certain scale that you rank everything on, but then that only means something to you.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, in an Intel ad, as soon as you start talking about anything other than clock speed, you've lost the majority of someone who's watching that ad. Whereas, if you're, I think it was Berlin. Is it Berlin? Who was the old Apple guy?
Slightly more specific. Because you can make a joke about Einstein from that,
Right. Or Isaac Newton.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can use Newton. I assume most people would go that route first, but I like the winding path to Einstein from Newton.
Berlin. I keep wanting to say Berlin's. Sorry. I don't know. Point is, I think he was the head of Apple Chip, or damn, I don't even remember what his title was. But he, you get him standing up talking about why you don't need to compare clock speeds on a Power PC and an Apple computer to the clock speed of an Intel chip in a Dell. That's the right audience for that.
And I think it's also telling, like, as much as I dislike a lot of times how vague Apple is with its marketing, I would say that they've gotten really good at getting the point across for the average person in recent years, where it's give you a comparison to something that's easy to compare to. 2.5 times faster, 20 times faster, whatever that might be. And sure, this is where I dislike that they pick and choose which benchmark they want to compare to based on just what looks better. But it's still something that's easy to see a comparison with. Like, just because they use, comparing Apple Silicon against a previous Apple machine with an Intel chip, it's a bad comparison. We know it's a bad comparison, but it is actually a good comparison for the average person walking in trying to make sense of what they're looking at.
It is. And
it doesn't try to target a specific number. It tries to give if you want to go use this machine, you can do this thing, and then you can reference how that feels and acts and behaves and how much faster or better it would be here. Like, that's where I like it over, focusing on megahertz or power per, or price per, performance per watt, or, any of the other things that are a bit more arbitrary in trying to decipher what that means.
Right. I was into the other thing that I was thinking of, or at least another thing that they kept seeming relevant to talk about was part of this compute power is it's what made drones possible. Like, there was a certain amount, there's a period of time where we didn't have the compute power wasn't available to make drones possible. You go and you fly a drone, you're in control of it, but there's so much going on that you're not in control of to keep what you're doing possible. And that's only been around for maybe a decade. And
yeah, it sounds about right.
Prior to that, you could, in general, wasn't possible except for, like, on the high end, just like anything else with technology. And currently, if people that know more about this kind of thing than me, they're like saying, well, we currently don't have the compute power for self-driving cars. Like, in the same way that we did, 20 years ago, we couldn't do, drones were not possible. Well, we can't. That's the reason why we can't do self-driving cars at the moment. It's because it's just we haven't gotten there. Technologically, it's not possible to do it safely in the way that we're trying to do it. Right? So, same sort of thing. It's like, go ahead.
I do wonder a little bit about whether that's an accurate argument, but I don't know nearly enough to say one way or another.
Well, it seems accurate to me because it's in looking, looking through the lens of we weren't able to do this with drones X number of years ago, and we can't do it with cars now. It makes sense to me because there are a lot more restrictions on cars. There's a lot more of the cars. There's a lot more interaction with humans in cars that you just don't have with drones. And I think finally, can we get those computers small enough to do all of those things and meet all of those requirements?
I mean, it certainly makes sense and tracks. Like I don't disagree with it. I think where I kind of wonder if it's an accurate argument is whether we can actually develop the software necessary to do it, as opposed to like the compute power and everything else. Like what is it that's stopping us from being able to develop the software that can accurately do it the way we're wanting to do it? Is it actually a resource limitation of some sort, or is it because
we
we're
just haven't figured it out?
Yeah, and that's where I was saying I really have no clue. Like I'm not in that space. I don't know enough about it. I'm not a developer by trade. There's so many questions I would have that I would need somebody to try to explain before I could accurately pick and choose where I think the limitations are. That I agree, it feels like it could just be that we haven't gotten there from an ability to package the technology. But it also feels like we haven't been able to get there because we haven't been able to actually develop the programs necessary to pull it off because of our own limitations. Our limitations obviously being humankind, not us.
Yeah.
And I think the only reason I kind of have that question is just because it's been a thing that's been supposedly going on for so long that I just question where the limitations are. That's probably a good way to summarize it.
I think so. I've heard it's probably more us than anything else. But is it us because our computers just aren't there yet, or is it us because we haven't figured out how to make our computers that could do it?
Yeah, good question. I mean, that's basically what I'm asking. That's a better way to summarize what I'm asking.
I know, and it's like it's kind of like the chicken or the egg. I think in retrospect we'll have figured it out. We have a number of different ways set up for you to get in touch with us to provide feedback, ask questions, or just comment in about something we've discussed.
You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at untitled_hosts, or shoot an email over to untitled.hosts@gmail.com.
Or get in touch directly with Jesse at jthart.com, or get in touch with me, John, via telepathy.
If you would like to support our work or are interested in listening to our new after-show feed, head over to patreon.com/theUntitledPodcast and take a look at the options we have set up.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the show.
And we hope to connect with more of you as we continue this journey.
That's a wrap.